And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if it's one of your favorite places to check out podcasts later on in the week. It is a very, very busy week all across the place, including in the sports world. It is DJ joined as always by my co-host Kelsey. And Kelsey, a culmination of months and months of rankings and polls and votings finally came to a culmination yesterday, and the decision has been made. We know who's right now in the college football playoff. Will it
Yeah,
stay that way, and how long? We don't know. But the voting is finally, the results are in.
I was worried, man. You started that, and I was like, "Oh God, are we gonna already talk about this?" Yeah, no, I love the fact that the rankings are out. I love the fact that we have an idea of who these 12 teams might be. In what 4, 5 weeks now, I believe. Actually, not even that long, 4 weeks. So yeah, it's exciting that we're there. Hopefully, I can stop crying over Auburn games every week. And you know what? It's gonna be fun. I'm really ready to see how they if they can actually successfully pull this 12-team playoff off without a hitch. I imagine there's going to be some complaints, but I think it should be good for the first year. I don't think there should be any reason to complain. I hope, but it looks good so far. I mean, I'm excited.
Well, in theory, I mean, we got exactly what we all wanted, so we should be good for this first year. Then we find the flaws, so then we start bitching in a couple of years. But for now, it should be okay. But
Yeah,
normally we like to kind of ease our way into things, but we're just going like a bat out of hell. That's going to take us right into the tip off, which brought to you, of course, by our friends at SeatGeek. Use code BellUpSports, $20 off your first purchase for any set of tickets for any concerts, sporting events, anything you might want to go to. And as we mentioned, we're going into the college football playoff today. Here's a look at the standings right now. This is not the bracket. This is just the standings. At the top, we got the Big Ten well represented with undefeated Oregon and number 2 Ohio State coming off a huge win over Penn State. Then we got number 3, Georgia, number 4, Miami, number 5, Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, and Boise State rounding out the top 12. So that is just what we're looking at for the rankings, though. This is not who would necessarily be in the playoffs. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go and take a look at who would be in the playoffs as we take a look at the bracket. Oregon, Georgia, Miami, BYU getting the buys. Ohio State, even though they're number 2, they get number 5. So tough break, BYU. That's who you get if that's who you get right out of the gate, more than likely, unless Ashton Genty puts on a performance. We got a Texas Alabama matchup from a year ago, Penn State and Notre Dame, and then surprise, surprise, Indiana, the Hoosier State's not a team not led by Bob Knight in Indiana, going to a potential playoff right now with, once again, I'm going to say this for the people in the back, the highest scoring offense in college football. This is not Peyton Manning, Indianapolis Colts. This is the Indiana Hoosiers. Would be taking on Tennessee. So here's what we're looking at for the college football playoff bracket. Kelsey, we got a lot to digest here. Some of your classic ones that you're used to, then some, I'm sorry, what? That could be just kind of mentioned there with Indiana. But we'll start with just the rankings first, the ones that we saw first. How do you feel about having the Big Ten, 2 O's from the Big Ten right at the top?
I don't hate it. I feel like Oregon wins. It makes sense, right? Oregon beats Ohio State. They should be number one. There's no doubt in my mind. That's a top 5 matchup. Ohio State pulling up the rear, pulling up in second. I shouldn't say the rear, but pulling up in second behind Oregon. Yeah, you lost to the number 1 team in the nation. You should be a really good team, and you just beat the number 3 team in the nation. So again, you get a little notch in your belt. I don't mind the top 2 being who they are. Again, everybody's heard me probably complain about the
Mhm.
fact that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 undefeated teams, and only 2 of them are in the top 4. I mean, when you get into the actual bracket, different conversation. But as far as in the top 4 currently in the standings, only 2 are there. But at least they did something right. And all 4 of the ones that I'm referencing are in the top 10, thankfully. But yeah, no, I don't mind the top 2 being Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami. That works out for me. I honestly, personally, would have Miami at 3. Just my opinion. But you know what? My opinion doesn't mean a whole lot. The fact is, Georgia has to go in the SEC, go through the SEC gauntlet, and by the time they get to do the SEC championship, they probably will beat another top 10 ranked team, if maybe at least top 15 ranked team by the time they get there. So, doesn't surprise me if Georgia gets there and gets through the SEC tournament as a SEC championship as the champions of the SEC, and yeah, okay, that works. And I think that's why they put him there. But honestly, the rest of it doesn't bother me. At least for the top five, it all checks out. Texas lost to Georgia. You got that weird round robin with Bama included, but Bama lost to Vandy, so that eliminates them from the top 10, thankfully. So, yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind any of that really.
I love that you led to Alabama because I like the top 5 as well. No complaints, no notes, but I'm gonna go to Alabama because I wanna know if they took something from the Chiefs school of magic voodoo or what exactly it did, where you're a 2-loss team that was all but assured to be out, but you find yourself in number 11 because A&M wets the bet against South Carolina this last weekend. Ole Miss choked a couple of games earlier this year, especially that LSU one that comes to mind. LSU choked to USC early on in the gate and haven't bounced back. Iowa State with a very surprising loss. All teams that were one-loss teams that would be ahead of them, in theory, at least I should say. Alabama should probably be in that 16 spot if those teams all take care of business. Maybe 13, 14 just outside.
Yeah.
But because nobody else takes business, Alabama gets precedence as the top-rated 2-loss team. Kind of like last year when they got into the college football playoff because they beat Georgia despite everything else out too. Like right place, right time. We'll see how it holds up because they just do have some games, but it is kind of funny how that works out. They went from, oh my God, they're number one. Oh my God, they're free falling. They just lost to Vandy and Tennessee too. We're right back in it. And I know you don't want to deal with us in round one. Don't let us get to Texas. You don't want us in round one. And if you get by Texas, good luck, everybody else. So I want to know what kind of magic they're using because I would like some of that for some of my parlays, honestly, because they're doing some magic. They'd always find themselves in the thick of it, regardless.
We like to call it the Crimson Blood Magic down south because it has been the same blood magic they've been practicing since I can ever remember.
Hmm.
ESPN loves them. College football voters love them. Everybody hates on everybody else in the SEC other than Bama. Oh, well, and I guess now Georgia as well. But no, I honestly don't hate the idea of Bama being the top 2-loss team right now. I think that's
Sure.
fair. Don't get me wrong. I do think there are two teams specifically that need to be ahead of them: Boise State, SMU. I think it should be ahead of Bama. The fact that Ashton Jeanty is still as dominant as he is, good luck stopping the guy. When you stop him, he still goes for over 100 and a touchdown. That's not stopping anybody. If that happens in your fantasy football league, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest week ever for a running back.
Mhm.
It's like that type of thing. And I'm just looking at they still give points on their rankings. Bama is outpacing both Boise State by about 24 and SMU by about 110. And I don't agree with those numbers. SMU, they're in the Big 12. They're a Power 5 team now. We need to not treat them like they're a Group of 5 team anymore. They are a quality team. You got to give the credit where it's due. They've done well. Their one loss, I believe, is to BYU. So why are we faulting them for losing to a top 10 team here? Yeah. So same reasoning you're going to use from Bama, you're not going to use from SMU. That's the part where I'm bothered by these rankings. I want to talk about Indiana, but the fact is, honestly, I don't think I can give them any more flowers than anybody else has given them this year. They've done great. Signetti has done a great job, but I also think they should be a little bit higher just with how good they are performing, and they're doing it in the Big Ten. And they have a couple big matchups coming up down the stretch that will decide their season as well. So a lot of this doesn't bother me for now. And I know I've talked about this when we were talking AP rankings earlier in the season. But it's going to be really for me. It's the weekend after Thanksgiving, so that's going to be the decider. Where you end up in that college football ranking. So that next Tuesday, Wednesday, where you're at, that's the one that matters to me because that's the one that's going to determine pretty much everything. Because if you lose in the championship round nowadays, you automatically don't get a bye, and then potentially you get bumped by somebody who did win their championship game. So that's going to be something that matters is where you end up at that point in time, and that's what for now I'm like, yeah, whatever. Unfortunately, they still live and die by these rankings. Like Army's not going to automatically jump into the top 10 this week for beating North Texas, even though they have one of the best offenses in North Texas in the nation. But I digress. Like people aren't going to look at that. They're just going to be like, it's still Army. Still don't know what to do with them. Until if they go beat Notre Dame, like, still Army. They're going to be 14 maybe. And that's the disappointing thing. They're not going to just change this overnight. So for a team like Army, you really got to win out. But for everybody else on this list, you're kind of like, all right, I'm in the top 12. I have a shot. I'll carry my own and give me a puncher's chance.
That's all you can ask for as well. And I'm looking to circle back now and look at the playoff bracket. So I kind of talked about the idea of Tennessee and Indiana having those two high-rated scoring offenses out of the gate. Love that matchup too. I think that'd be fun. Ohio State and Boise State. If Ashton Genty can play like road to glory on college football, but on like freshman level, I think they have a chance in that regard. But it's a very slim chance. As much as I kind of hate on Ohio State's passing game for the most part. Will Howard kind of annoys me with some of the passes he misses and some of the decision making, but that I still think that's arguably the best roster in college football, top to bottom. Arguably. So I said before the season on a college football show, I think it's still that case when you look at the running backs, the receivers, the offensive line, defensive line, etc. Texas, Alabama, you could put that in any single round of this matchup, and it's an outstanding matchup. I know we talked about Alabama, the 2-loss team. At this point, it's still Bama. You still have Jalen Milroe, who's loosely still a Heisman contender, kind of adjacent, and Kellen DeBoer, who I believe has the highest winning percentage in college football right now. So right there, you still have a good matchup. You could put it
Second
any round
highest.
in second best, excuse me. So he's
Yeah.
right there in the thick of it. And then the last matchup, Penn State and Notre Dame, two really good teams, but they're the two teams that nobody has any faith in to win besides their fan base, unfortunately. Like, nobody's in back. I think Penn State can go on a run. I think Notre Dame, this is the year. No one they're the two teams that have the least, amount of effect moving forward is what it feels like, and I don't mean that as a shot to them. I'm saying, like, any given Saturday, obviously, but the perspective is you're gonna take pretty much the other 10 teams against them for the most part, so I think that's interesting how that lines up, so that's just
Yeah,
my perspective on those first round matchups. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I'll say those last two matchups you talked about, Bama, Texas, that doesn't happen. To me, that game's not going to happen. As much as I would love to see it in round one, it's just not going to happen. And that's just down to the schedule they both have ahead of them. They're going to be ranked higher. And now the odds are this game becomes a 5-6 match or whatever that matchup equivalent is. Or potentially one of them is the 4 seed with an SEC championship. Like, there's so many different odds of how the SEC championship's going to rank here. And, just looking back at it, right here, you have 4 teams from the SEC. Let's not forget Texas is SEC, guys. They are an SEC team now. 4 teams in the SEC here that could shake out any which way. But the Big Ten is facing their same conundrum with 4 teams in the Big Ten, and those get pulled based off of divisions, which becomes a little more difficult for the Big Ten. Whereas the SEC is pulled off of overall best. So there's a potential here that we could see a Bama, Georgia, Bama, Texas, Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, LSU could get in the championship game. There are so many different odds that could mess up what we saw right there. The SEC teams, as much as I'm excited to see those matchups, I don't think most of them happen. I do think the Tennessee Indiana one is a very interesting one because I don't think Tennessee loses very many games left. I don't think they have much of a chance to lose any. I think there's one more game that I'm maybe concerned about with them. Indiana, I think, has a great opportunity to win out. But if they win out, then that messes up one of the other Big Ten teams we've seen on this list. So there's so many different things. And like I said, Army earlier, if Army beats Notre Dame is not in this anymore. There's no chance Notre Dame's still in this top 10, which could be the vault that Army needs to get into the top 10 and get into that position. Where if they win the American, then they could be that group of 5 team up there. But yeah, it's, a lot, them and Boise State could be at large group of 5 teams. So there's so many opportunities for anything for those last 2 matchups, specifically the Georgia Texas or the Alabama Texas, the Penn State Notre Dame ones. If that's how it shook out, that's an absolutely insane round one. You get the 2 most perennially disappointing teams when it comes to playoffs in Penn State and Notre Dame, who just can't win the big ones for some reason. And then you get 2 of the most exciting teams that we've seen recently in Texas and Sarkisian and Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe. You get 2 quarterback matchups there where potentially top quarterbacks drafted in their own respective draft. Like, there are so many different fun things to play on that. And then you have the old school, like, oh, these are the 2 greatest franchises of all time in college football. It's like, all right, well, and then on top of that, then one of you has to go play Miami. The other one has to go play Georgia. Good luck. That's a tough thing, but it's going to be fun. I don't know. And seeing the 12-team playoff and actually seeing what it could be already, like, and not just like the imagination, like now we're actually seeing teams being put and shuffled around in a proper order. So now I'm excited far more than I was even last week for the college football playoff.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see as well. We talked about the teams in the first round. The next round, Oregon, duh. Georgia, duh. Miami, duh. All those make sense right now. That surprise number 4 team, the BYU Cougars, also known as a regular representative on the coin flip because people forget
Yeah.
they are a Big 12 team that is leading a major conference right now. But Kelcey, this week's coin flip, you think there's a chance that maybe a Big 12 team maybe could work their way up to taking that spot from BYU, but you're going to be putting a little bit of money on them this weekend.
Yeah, look, I've rooted for the Fighting Mormons a few times. They've helped me out in the coin flip, if you will. And they were our push of the season. The first one, they were our push of the season, but they got us back on the right track after mistakenly picking against Indiana. My bad, Indiana. I didn't mean to
Mm.
set you off. And then I picked BYU. They won us money. And then unfortunately, last week was not a good week for Tulsa. I don't think they ever got off of the plane because they sure weren't in Birmingham. That's safe to say. John Kitna's successor is showed out in that one. But this week, like you said, Big 12, we're going to another father-son duo that is setting the world on fire with a couple Heisman Trophy candidates here. We're going with Colorado at Texas Tech. Now, I was shocked when I saw this money line was so close, considering how good Colorado's offense has been. Namely, the fact that Shedeur Sanders is fourth in the nation in passing. Technically speaking, he is tied for third in the nation for passing touchdowns, along with 2,500 passing yards and only 6 picks. Having a fantastic season. I mentioned North Texas. He's the number 2 guy. But Colorado, minus 170 at Texas Tech. I think there's every opportunity that they go down to Lubbock and pull one out. I've never seen Dion walk out of Texas without getting some sort of a victory, whether it be a moral victory or a real victory. Dion does not lose in Texas. That state is his second home, and it seems like he's going to pass that down to Shedeur. Look, and then Travis Hunter should be a top 3 Heisman candidate, probably right behind a couple guys, but he's easily one of the best players in the nation. And if he's healthy, fully healthy in this game, there should be no concerns. I watched a bunch of Texas Tech matchups in the last couple weeks, and there's holes that can be taken advantage of in that passing game. But there's also their offense. Texas Tech's offense is so reliant on a efficient offense, and that gives somebody like Travis Hunter, who likes to press and then jump receivers, every opportunity to take one to the house. So for me, I'm going with the coin flip for Colorado. I'll pop back up on the screen for everybody. So minus 170 money line. This is, by the way, the first favorite I've picked in the coin flip. But the idea of the coin flip is it's a close matchup. So that's what we're going with here. Only a 3.5 point spread. So that's going to be supposedly a close one. But for me, I'm picking Colorado in this one. And I mean, I'm not going to pick them to cover the spread, but I'm just going to pick them straight out on the money line. Just see if we can get back on the right track after last week's bad, disappointing loss.
We'll say the money line and the spread are close enough to where you might as well just take the money line. But 3.5 points with Colorado, I like it because if they're going to win probably comfortably, like 7-10, something like that. If they're going to lose, or they're going to lose, I don't think they're going to win by 3, 2, or 1. I think they're going to win, or it's going to be like Baylor where it goes to overtime, they score a touchdown and then get a stop, they win. It's going to be something like that. So I like that one as well. I do think they have a very, very good shot. So maybe we'll be throwing some money on the Sanders kids this week too. So we're going to keep an eye on that. I like that.
I got to root for a Cowboys somewhere, and it's sure enough not in the NFL.
Yeah, we'll get to them. Don't you worry about that, sir. But before we get there, we're gonna have to take a quick step onto the hardwood because we gotta talk about it because, well, frankly, we've been both supportive and hard on this guy for all the right and wrong reasons. We got Joel Embiid, who is now suspended for 3 games, not because of the load management, which are the things they're talking about, quote unquote, investigating him about. Comes in the wake of an incident in which he shoved a reporter taking issue with a recent column. I believe the reporter was Haynes. And it basically questioned Embiid's professionalism, staying in shape while naming Embiid's son and his late brother, who both share the same name. I'm going to keep it quick and simple with this one, too. We won't spend too much time on it. I always advocate that there should be like a mutual agreement between those two, like a mutual respect, that sort of thing between reporter athlete, like they live symbiotically. In this case, though, he asked for it. Like, you know what, free Joel. He was right on this one. You don't cross that line and don't expect to get pushed. He didn't punch him. He didn't slam him. He didn't. You can. We've seen people slam reporters and get elected governor in states. Like this was a shove. So it was. I don't condone not condoning violence, but at the same time, like Mama said, knock you out, and he didn't go that far. At least he just get. This one's tough because I think 3 games that okay. Maybe I would have probably just went 1 game. Honestly, when you actually read the comments, like why did you bring this up? This has absolutely zero relevancy to the point you were trying to make. It feels like you are using applesauce to make orange juice by even bringing it up. So kudo I'm just gonna leave it at that. Like, you asked for it, but I don't necessarily condone it. But we're not. It's like a slap on the hand. Like, don't do that. Don't go pushing people, even if they directly ask you to.
Yeah, I'm reading some of the recap of it, and basically it went on for 90 seconds before Embiid lost his cool. Um, let's start at the beginning of this, right? First of all, as you said, there needs to be mutual respect between reporters and players, and especially hometown reporters and your hometown team. You're in that locker room every single night. You're in those practice arenas. You're there along with them in off season, in training camps, in regular season, in the commissioners' cups, all the way if they go to the playoffs and if they go to the finals, you're with them the entire time. You see these guys more than you probably see most of your family members. You have to have respect. Absolutely have to have respect. One of the things that some of our favorite reporters ever have done are the high levels of respect, and it's a professional line. You do not talk about a family member. You do not talk about a child. You do not talk about anything other than the player's performance on the court and potential distractions to that play without naming specifics. You can go that far, but you cannot talk about family members. And that's number one. It's on both sides. There's a problem here on both sides. Joel Embiid should not ever lay hands on a reporter. That reporter can not protect himself to a Joel Embiid. Same time, do I blame him? No. They said that about me to one of my family members. Not a single chance in the world that I probably would keep a cool head. So I'm not going to fault Embiid for that. I'm not going to fault him for reacting the way he did. I think Joe Dumars, VP of NBA operations, player personnel, sorry, NBA executive vice president and head of basketball operations, sorry, Joe Dumars, former Piston. Hilarious out of everything. Bad. There we go. All right, I'm back now. But no, he sums it up well. He says, while we understand Joel wasn't offended by the personal nature of the original version of the reporter's column, interaction must remain professional on both sides and can never turn physical. I think that sums up everything we're trying to say here. Just got to keep it professional, even though that's a tough situation for Embiid. I feel bad for him for having to go through that. I feel bad for his family for having to hear that. The reporter needs to know better. I think there should be probably a suspension to the reporter for even commenting on that. But in the situation, Embiid being a 7-foot tall man, 200 and however many pounds,
Probably 300 something if we're being
yeah, can't get physical at any point in time with a reporter. It just never works well for the athlete, and it's sad that it's got to that point. But yeah, maybe a little bit better protections for Embiid and his family, and just in general, like a better awareness from the media team for the Sixers. Why are you letting this guy come up and be in the same scrum around Embiid after saying that? You know he said it, and you know that media team should have been like, "Look, man, don't bring it up. Period. If he starts jawing with you, say I apologize, my bad, and move on." That should be the conversation. And if you don't, you will not be allowed back in any of these Sixers media scrums at all. And that needs to be the end of it. It's a no longer a slap on the wrist. It's a first and final. Move on. And that should be the extent of it for both sides. But yeah, this is disappointing for so many levels. But yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
I will say, like, I think the one thing that came out of this that I thought was most interesting is they suspended him for 3 games, and this was right after the talk of him saying he might never play back-to-backs in his career. The NBA really wanted to punish him. They should have said, "You are playing 3 games in a row. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You will be out there for 3 games in a row." See, that's how you make a light joke about it without going after families. I will be accepting that job as a reporter if they would like to offer it to me. I
Yeah.
I will only take double his salary. So they need something that's not if they need someone to write the columns, I'm right here for it, but that's what we're gonna have for the tip-off. That's gonna now take us into the main event, and for the main event today, we are gonna head back to the NFL, and we got another one, coach. We have another one. Another coach fired. We just hit the trade deadline not even 24 hours ago. Dennis Allen out from the Saints, joining Robert Saleh as coaches to leave in. This one's a day late and like $5 short. They probably shouldn't have hired him in the first place. We were on the show saying it was not a good hire at the time. B should have been last year, should have been the year before, whatever. But 2-7, 7-game losing streak. Absolutely no energy across the team whatsoever. Your quarterback's getting your receiver killed on multiple occasions and has now got you fired in midseason twice. I think Derek Carr should actually put that on his LinkedIn. Got Allen fired midseason twice. Like that's actually quite commendable. But and almost a decade apart too, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 14 and it was about 14 or 15 and 28 in
Yeah.
2024. So kudos in that regard. But for me, it's just like, all right, it's kind of obvious. Saints, they got a lot of overhauling to do there. Their salary cap is in hell. They're overpaying a lot of older guys. They're stuck in Midland, not the place in Texas like Midville, Midland. They got to find a way to clean house quickly. And kudos to whoever takes that job next. Someone's going to take it because there's only 32 of them. But boy, are they going to have their work cut out for them. Your number one receiver is getting killed by your quarterback, among other things. Your quarterback, who still has 2 years left on his $120 million deal or whatever it is still around. You got a lot of old aging defensive players, Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, etc. Just traded Marshawn Lattimore to the Commanders for 2 bags of peanuts and a bag of Doritos. Things are looking rough in New Orleans, but I think this was the first step they had to make. I think this one it had to be done. You dropped 7 in a row, including just losing to the Panthers, which, with all due respect to Panthers fans, that is about as low as it gets right now. You have the same record as the Panthers. If I'm not mistaken, they are higher up in the division rankings than you are, if I'm not mistaken. I could be off, but I'm pretty sure that they are higher in the standings than you right now.
Yeah. Yeah. This is bad. Why the Saints wanted to keep him around this long, I'll never understand. I mean, I shouldn't say it's bad. It's bad for Dennis Allen. It's not bad for the Saints. Every Saints fan should be excited. Every Saints fan should be, well, maybe not excited, but hopeful that maybe you can return to the first.
Still mad about everything else.
Yeah, first 3 games performance. Maybe you can go back there. They showed some highlights this last weekend, but it's obviously the situation with Olave is and Carr is a problem. You got to figure out a number 2 receiver. The fact that there's a guy named Bub who is right now probably your favorite target that's not named Rashid Shadeed, whose name I cannot say 3 times fast.
Mm.
There are legitimate problems. You have Alvin Kamara. Honestly, after the first 3 games, you stopped using him as much as you should have. And then, you still have Jamal Williams, who is a double-digit touchdown running back in the season, 3 years removed. Yeah, he was that good 3 years ago, and now you don't even really give him the ball. A tight end that you've had perform well for you, you decide to put him on the bench in favor of a quarterback turned tight end, turned wide receiver, turned running back, turned linebacker, turned kicker, turned
punt team. Don't forget he's on the punt
gunner, turned whatever you want to call him. Yeah, I know you've said it before. I think I've said it before. I think the Saints will forever be doomed to have a successful offense as long as Taysom Hill is on that team. And it's no offense to Taysom Hill. He is too good at too many things to not be, and not bad enough to want to take him off the field. But at the same time, you take away the effective weapons. The fact Chris Olave isn't being used, the fact Juwan Johnson isn't being used, and you have a quarterback who was an MVP candidate, as you mentioned, 10 years ago, 11 years ago before breaking his leg? And now we're
8 years now. We haven't hit double digits since he was the MVP candidate.
So, yeah,
2 years ago, arguably.
Yeah. So, this team has all the hopefuls for be exciting on offense. It just seems like it's a mess. All around, it is just an absolute mess. And that's where, it's bad for the Saints. This wasn't a firing where it's a nice, clean house. Robert Saleh got fired, and you're like, all right, well, pretty much everything else is still in place, so they'll be fine. Dennis Allen gets fired, and you're like, I don't know where my keys are. That's how this feels. So, I don't know what the Saints are going to do here, but somebody's going to get the job, and I just feel so bad for them. So,
and then in the meantime, too, the special teams coordinator will be taking over the head coaching job. So maybe you can right the ship. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it's a mess there in New Orleans. They kick the can down the road too many times. Eventually, you got to stop kicking. You just got to kick. You got to take the can off the road. So we'll see what the Saints have moving forward. But you know what? Maybe they're in contention for a Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, or something like that. Who knows? You never know what's going with them. But we're gonna go from one team that's kind of a mess to another team that's kind of a mess right now, unfortunately. We're gonna go to Kelsey's Dallas Cowboys, and we're not gonna rag on him the same way. But Dak is heading to the IR, and what a lot of people ripped on saying, "Oh, it's your hamstring, get out there and play." Well, it's a little worse than we thought. It's a partial avulsion. I can't even say that one time
Avulsion.
fast. Avulsion of his hamstring tendon. Basically, it's off the bone. It's gonna take a month, if not a little bit longer too. And sometimes it could take even longer if he decides not to get surgery. So he got about as worse of a hamstring injury as you can get, a partial version of that. So he's heading the IR. It is Cooper Rush season yet again. Cowboy season, I think it's safe to say, is I'm not gonna say doomed, but like good luck at this point. Like I feel like those Cowboys preseason futures bets on them getting the playoffs are in some serious jeopardy right now.
Hmm.
Not that
Yeah,
they weren't in jeopardy like before he got hurt. Now they're just in more jeopardy.
yeah, this one hurts. Obviously, as the resident Cowboys hater here, by Cowboys hater, I do mean a fan technically. I just haven't found anybody else to root for that I like to tear my heart out as much. This sucks. You feel bad for Dak in a way, where obviously the ankle injury being the first one, and now you have this kind of crazy hamstring situation. Did he tear it on the run before, or partially tear it off the bone the run before, and then when he went to step, did that fully tear it? I don't know what the situation is there, how that happened, but that is such a crazy situation where it actually rips part of the bone off with the hamstring. It's kind of crazy to think about. They're not an easy recovery. Usually, you need surgery to reattach it, and that takes a couple months. Um, obviously he's getting second opinions, but still, like, this is wild, and it continues in a season where supposedly Dallas is all in. This is adding insult to well, now it's adding injury to the insult given by their owner, and you have to try to figure out a way to win now with Cooper Rush, with your number one running back being benched, healthy scratches. Your second string running back now, after your starter gets benched as a healthy scratch, he is now drinking on the sideline before games. Rico Dowdell isn't experienced enough to be out there. Your number one wide receiver probably separated his shoulder, if not broken clavicle, depending on what they officially announce as his injury. I say officially because it seems to be that they're trying to cover something up.
What they
Um,
saying it's an AC joint, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah,
yeah, no, it's not great.
that's more than an eight. When you have a DB run by you and glance, like not even glance, like just lightly brush your shoulder, and you go down in pain, that's more than just an AC joint. So there's some problems there for Dallas. Obviously, you talk about Michael Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence as well to go with it. Offensive linemen who may or may not be healthy. This team might not reach 6 wins. And that's a crazy thought for me because I'm like, this team was going to the play. I mistakenly picked them to lead the division. Mistakenly because I did a blind. I still hate that I did that.
Mm.
And this is just rubbing it in. I was given hope 2.5 years ago that this team might be on its way. That season ended in Zeke playing center and getting knocked on his butt in the last play of the game. And I have been disappointed ever since then. And this just Dak going to the IR kind of sums all that up for me. I know it's a long-winded rant for this dude poor guy being injured yet again. But honestly, this is crazy, absolutely crazy. I can't do this anymore with the Cowboys. I don't know what they're gonna do. Rush might be the answer. He's probably not the answer. You don't have an answer on this roster. Figure out something to go get a quarterback next year.
I know Cooper Rush won a handful of games a couple of years ago, and Dak had the finger injury. I think he was like 4-1 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was also an elite defense they had at the time too. That was holding teams at like 18 points per game during that stretch. That was prime Micah Parsons. That was Trayvon Diggs. They were elite on defense at that time. They're not right now. They are very far from elite right now, and all those guys are hurt on top of it. So even if they are elite, we have not seen it this year. Besides maybe a half against the Browns, but as we have learned, everybody is elite against the Browns minus the Ravens and Jameis Winston for some reason. But anyway, my biggest question is you traded a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance. He's been in your system for is he? I know he had that really erratic preseason game with 5 interceptions and 400 yards. Is he really just like the worst practice player ever that you don't want to play him in this scenario? Maybe it's Cooper Rush this week and then they give Trey Lance the next week. Maybe that's what they're doing. They want to give him a extreme ramp up period. I don't know, but like I get it. You keep him as your emergency third quarterback. You don't want him as the backup. Okay, whatever. Right now, you're giving him a full week going into this game. He would know he's the starter. I don't know why you trade a fourth round pick if you have no intention of putting him in on this point. If he is that just terrible you can't put him in there, why is he on the roster? Like, why do you have him on the roster if there's no he's 25 years old, I think, 24. Like he's a child by NFL standards. There's a long ways to go. You brought him in for a reason. Jerry Jones bragged about that trade, and fourth round picks are a valuable commodity, especially to teams like the Cowboys who draft well in those mid rounds. They got Dak
Yep.
Prescott, I think, is a fourth or fifth round pick. Like they do good drafting in those mid rounds. So I hope we see Trey Lance during this just because why not, right? Well, let's see what you have there. Because if Trey Lance is bad, okay, well, you're going to get that quarterback like you're well on your way to do anyway. If he's good, oh my God, how do we stumble into this? Then you figure out because his contract expires at the end of the year too. So it's not like you're developing Trey Lance, sitting him on the bench. He's going to be our guy in a year. You got him for 10 more games, maybe 11 if I my math's off. But I would say I think they should go play him for sure. You went to get Trey Lance for this reason, as we just got in our comment section below from Kid Cowboy as well. This seems like a Cowboys fan. This is why you get Trey Lance for this situation. Maybe they give him a week, like a full week, and then it's the following week. I don't know what they're thinking, but I do think we have to see Trey Lance during this, unless Cooper Rush looks like 2024 Sam Darnold out of the gate, which I'll take the odds on under. But I think we got to see Trey Lance during the stretch. Otherwise, what's the point? It just feels like worse malpractice than we already joke about the Cowboys malpracticing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this does feel a little bit like tanking unintentionally. Obviously, not the injury. Obviously the injuries popped up on screen, but that's not what necessarily we're talking about now. We're in the future of the Cowboys here. It feels like an accidental, intentional tank season. And obviously, everybody knows what I'm talking about here. No surprise to anybody that a professional sports franchise would potentially tank for a all-world player in a draft. The problem is there might be one in this draft coming up, maybe two that you're looking at. Like, this could change my franchise. Travis Hunter being one, but can he stay healthy in the NFL with that size? I don't know. The other one being Quinn Ewers? Probably not. So it's not like you have a lot of hope there. It's not Shedeur. No offense to Shedeur. I love Shedeur, but he's not an all perennial world talent at quarterback. He played the position really well, but yeah. So what do you do? I mean, you got you have to figure out quarterback situation. You have to figure out what you have in Trey Lance, and this is no better time to do that than right now. I mean, no offense to Cooper Rush, we know his limitations. He is Brandon. Brandon? Not Brandon Allen. Derek Anderson.
Orton, yeah.
Now, Derek Anderson, who I was trying to think of. Derek Anderson is his ceiling, which, okay, it's a great backup. That's not what you need in an NFL quarterback. That's not what you need as a Cowboys quarterback. So figure it out. See what Trey Lance can get you for the rest of the season and call it well. I don't think Cowboys fans are going to hate that idea. Just see what you got. I mean, at this point in time.
You know what makes this even more interesting is the moves that they made at the NFL trade deadline, because not only did they trade a fourth round pick for Trey Lance last year, they traded one for Jonathan Mingo this year, who talented receiver out of Ole Miss who has 20 NFL games. Talented. I didn't say good. Talented. So Kelcey, you're
And
shaking
less
your
than
head. No, the floor is
150
yours
yards.
because you're ready for this one. It is all yours. So.
How many wide receivers have we seen traded? Did we see traded at this deadline? 5 within 2 weeks of
Before
the deadline.
like 5, yeah, like even before
Yeah.
the deadline.
Yeah. So going back to Devontae, then Deontay, and then
Amari,
DeAndre. One of those receivers went for a higher draft pick. One. And it was Devontae. No, sorry. Yeah, Devontae with a third round.
Amari went for a third round too.
Was it Amari? Okay, so two out of the 5 went for higher than Mingo.
Like all pros on their resumes.
Yeah, Pro Bowls, all pros, receiving records, reception records, absolute monsters. Number 1 game changers. Jonathan Mingo has 12 catches for 147 yards, something like that, 127 yards on the season. What are we doing? He couldn't get time in Carolina, and you're going to trade a 4th round pick in hopes that this kid pans out? Like, maybe you're hoping for a 7th round Brock Purdy or something? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what as a franchise, what are the Cowboys thinking that this is going to be a successful trade for him? And I have all hopes that the guy is talented beyond just his college years. But what we've seen out of Ole Miss when they have trios of receivers is 2 of the receivers are good. The third receiver washes out of the league immediately. Within 3 years. Gone. Don't hear from him. A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. Great. Does anybody remember that third receiver for that team? Nope. Couldn't even tell you. But there was one. He came out at the same time. I believe he was drafted in the 3rd round. You don't hear from him anymore. So you're waiting on that next Ole Miss class, what they're going to do. And I think Mingo's the guy that you're a little worried about. So I think there's a lot of problems. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Cowboys need a receiver because we don't know what's going to happen with CD. Obviously, Cooper Rush needs somebody to throw the ball to other than Jake Ferguson because that seems to be all he has on the field right now that actually shows up in the game on game days. And then Jalen Tolbert forgets to catch the ball. Kevontae Turbin is a kick returner and isn't ready to play offensive snaps, it seemed like, this last week. So I don't know what's going on with the Cowboys. Maybe it's just an emergency. Oh, no, we got to try to figure out something. But, yeah, this feels like a, you know what? We need something we're going to overpay for it situation. And congratulations to the Panthers. They got a 4th-round pick, and they're going to go and make a great draft pick out of that in next year.
I understand them not trying to trade for like Amari, DeAndre, all those type of guys as well, because salary cap plays a part in that as well, because you will have to pay for that unless somebody could take part of it. Mingo's on the rookie deal. I'm offended by the 4th-round pick part of it, because I mentioned that earlier too. Your team, Dallas, you should know how valuable that pick is, and you're trading for a guy who has 0 touchdowns this year, and I think has like 1 career touchdown last year. He has 12 catches on the year. He's talented. I like the skill set. I think there is something there. He's young. It's not the end of his career. There's none of that. But why are you giving up a 4th-round pick? Well, you should be giving up a 6th-round pick that could turn into a 4th-round pick or something like that. Like, especially when you just saw your franchise quarterback, who is the richest player in NFL history, go down for a month, if not longer. He's the highest paid receiver in football, 2nd highest paid, something like that. He's now banged up with a shoulder injury. So you go and trade for Jonathan Mingo, but you won't play Trey Lance. I'm so confused. I disagree. 4th-rounders can be important. I disagree, but
there are more
each round pick
4th-round
can be
draft picks. There are more 4th-round draft picks and 5th-round draft picks that start in the NFL than 1st and 2nd-round draft picks.
We could find like anomalies for every round where 7th round Brock Purdy, 6th round Tom Brady. We'll find superstars at every level. I think with Mingo, I would have preferred a later one for someone who hasn't produced on that as well too. Especially when you need a receiver, but you're a mess right now, and you just lost your star quarterback and your star receivers banged up. It's a very weird thing. I like Mingo. Cowboys confuse me though, but
this goes to the conversation of trading away or not going out and trying to sign Noah Brown in the offseason. And you sit there and you look at your team and you're like, oh, we need another receiver because outside of CD and Brandon Cooks for 3 passes a season, we don't have a quality 2nd receiver. And that's a problem with the Cowboys is they're like, oh, well, we have a number 1 and we have a guy who was really good in a garage in Houston, but since he's, pulled out into the driveway, we can't find him. So it's a product of the system. The Cowboys are still trying to figure themselves out after losing Dan Quinn, and it's just been like a cacophony of dominoes falling and just ruining everything. Not Kyler, but God, his name's running away from the offensive coordinator who is now with Philly. That's
Kellen Moore.
Thank you. I forgot. I blanked him out of my name. I love him to death, but I blanked him out of my mind because I just can't keep doing it anymore. So, yeah, I disagree. Mingo, this is a comment that bothers me. No, Jalen Tolbert is a 10 times better receiver than Mingo. Mingo is a great athlete, but Tolbert is a better receiver, and that's the important differentiation there. Yes, one played at South Alabama, one played at Ole Miss. That doesn't make you a better receiver. Better receivers usually come from smaller schools, and then the bigger schools, they're just great athletes. Once they get to the pros, you kind of can't teach them to be a better receiver, but you can teach a great receiver to be a great receiver. You can keep him being a great receiver. So yeah, there's a better. Anyways, I digress. But yeah, this whole Cowboys thing just bothers me. It's confusing. It's confusing to Cowboys Cowboys fans and blogs and everything across the net. So miss me with the this makes sense type of deal with Jonathan Mingo. It's not about that. Jonathan Mingo can Hopefully, do well 5 years down the road. If he's still a Cowboy, great. If he's not, okay. But that fourth round draft pick you could have had, that could have been an offensive lineman that starts for you for 20 years. Not really 20, but 15 years.
I'd like
Is
an
gone
offensive
now.
lineman that starts for 20 years. That'll be
Oh,
that'll
dude,
be
I'd die for that. But give me a 12-year offensive lineman out of the fourth round. I'm gonna call it swell.
well, the good news is we're done talking about your Cowboys for a little bit too,
Thank
because I
God.
can I can feel it taking a little bit out of
My
your
life
soul.
is leaving me as we say that. Like my life is just gone.
Because we got a whole lot of other NFL trade deadline deals. We'll just highlight a few of them. Zadarius Smith, the big one, arguably going to the Lions for a fifth and a sixth round pick. So the Browns, sellers and the Lions looking to replace some of the Aiden Hutchinson production. We also got the Vikings
And he
acquiring
and he has
Cam
a
Rock.
and he has a year and he has a year option when he gets to the Lions.
Absolutely. So he's got a little bit of little wiggle room there. Steelers are actually getting surprisingly busy as well, acquiring outside linebacker Preston Smith from the Packers for a seventh round pick and Mike Williams for a fifth round pick. So adding another pass rusher and a big bodied receiver to play opposite of George Pickens. I honestly I like that move. Very, very low, very, very low. What's the word? Maybe
Low
not
risk,
huge
high reward.
results, but like low. Yeah, there we go. Low risk, very high reward, especially if you get Chargers Mike Williams. Just run deep and dunk on people. Let George Pickens do everything in between. And then the occasional Najee Harris on check down.
Hey,
Especially with the
I'm
Russell
saying
Wilson throws moon balls.
all I'm saying, Dallas, Mike Williams was available for a fifth round pick.
Yeah, he was right there for sure. Also, Commanders, obviously, with the second biggest one, arguably as well, getting Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints for a third round, fourth round, and sixth round pick. Their biggest weakness was arguably secondary. When Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen weren't terrorizing quarterbacks, the secondary could get had in spots. Well, Marshawn Lattimore makes that a whole lot easier. The worst part about this entire trade, though, is we will not get our annual Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore throwdown, and I'm very disappointed about that. Send Mike Evans to the Giants right now so we can still get those divisions.
Mike Evans to the Cowboys. Sign it.
They already traded their designated fourth round pick for a receiver. It's already gone.
I don't care. Do it. At this point in time, put a bunch of big bodies out there and see if Cooper Rush can throw the ball up to him.
I think that's a very good pickup for the Commanders.
Yes. Yeah,
I think
100%.
that's an awesome move for them. Tre'Davious White going to the Ravens. He's unfortunately those injuries have completely killed his athleticism and his
Yeah.
legs, unfortunately. But at least he gets to be on a winner, and he is a veteran. So I think in
He's
that secondary, which has struggled, he could benefit, but I don't see him going out there and looking like X Factor Trey White.
he's gonna enjoy that 3 deep zone they run.
Hmm.
He is
Yeah,
gonna enjoy that far, far too much.
absolutely. And then an interesting one here, Zach Moss with an injury to his neck. It looks like he's going to be out for the season by this way from practice. I don't know what the Bengals are doing at practice. You got T. Higgins out for several weeks. You got Zach Moss out for several weeks because of practice. Bengals, get a practice field where you don't have to literally cross the street to get to.
Well,
B,
they don't
quit
have to
hurting
cross the
each other.
street. No, they don't have to cross the street. They have to cross a park and a walkway to get there. The problem is they laid their practice field, by the way, on top of concrete. It used to be a concrete section in the middle of a park.
You made it worse, basically, by explaining
Yeah.
it. My point being, Bengals fix that and B, quit hurting each other in practice. My goodness. But to try and offset that a little bit, they will be sending a seventh round pick to the Bears for Khalil Herbert, who, fun fact, was the first player to score an offensive touchdown for the Bears this year against the Texans. So that's he's been inactive a little bit because they are pretty deep at running back otherwise, but interesting pickup for the Bengals. I do look forward to seeing how he fits in there. Kind of a scat back, compliment Chase Brown, but we'll see. That'll be an interesting fit for sure.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I think I like a lot, and I think you will like as well. The Cardinals surprise buyers at the trade deadline as the leaders in the NFC West, sending a sixth round pick to Denver for Baron Browning, the defensive end slash outside linebacker. He's only started about 9 games since entering, but he has his moments. Like he can get after it. He can get after it if the offensive lineman is, I don't want to say weak, but if it's a weak spot at your offensive line, if he's lined up across a slower tackle, he can get after it. And they need to get after the quarterback in the front. That's what the Cardinals desperately need. And you're giving up a 6th round pick for. I like that move a lot for the Cardinals. I don't know if it'll make a huge difference, but I like the move itself.
Yeah, I think this for for the Cardinals, it makes sense. I like the opportunity. It really is what it is that Browning can come in and maybe make the difference. He doesn't have to be a full-time difference maker like they were relying on him to do in Denver, and he obviously didn't do a terrible job at it, but he wasn't week in, week out. He also had a couple injuries here and there, so you know, didn't really get a fully pan out. But we've seen what he can do. I mean, Browning at times is one of the most dominant defensive linemen out there, right? Outside linebacker, defensive lineman, whatever you want to call him, on the field, and he can perform well. It's just a matter of can you keep him consistently healthy and go to the Cardinals. That team is looking on the ups, and you don't have to play every single snap. Go out there for pass downs and see what you can do, and that's I think his best way to perform. Really, like call it a NASCAR package or whatever you want to call it, and he'll get right at the quarterback.
Absolutely. Speaking of getting after the quarterback, the last one I kind of want to pop in on is rotational pass rusher Josh Uche leaving the Patriots, going to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 6th-round pick. Uche, who had 11 and a half sacks 2 years ago, now will be joining George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Nick Bolton in the squad, and just give them the Super Bowl ring at this point. Like, my goodness, you get D-Hop, who, while he's not quite all right, you get DeAndre Hopkins, who's not quite D-Hop anymore, but he looks revitalized catching passes from Patrick Mahomes, and especially when he only has to catch them sometimes. And then now you throw in Josh Uche to go with this. How do they keep getting away with it? Like, what is going on? Is the Taylor Swift voodoo in full effect? Like, it's got to stop if that's the case.
I don't know where all the money is. I know the Hunt family's loaded, but I didn't think they were this loaded. This is just crazy. I thought there was a salary cap at some point in time, but the Titans taking on some of that load as well. So it's one of those like DeAndre Hopkins can catch a ball. He can catch a ball at any point in time. If he's open, he will catch ball. If he's partially open,
he doesn't have to
not
be
even open. If he's not open and he can stick his arm up over somebody, he can still catch the ball. And now he has probably the most accurate passer he's ever played with in his entire career, going back his entire life to Patty. And the guy who just says, I don't care. I know I have a dude right there and we'll throw the ball to you so you can go use those 12-inch mitts or whatever the size they are to catch everything. Like, I mean, his hands are freakish. We know that. He doesn't have to separate like some of the concerns were with him in Tennessee. That's why Levis really and him didn't get along because he couldn't really separate to get Levis those giant windows that Levis needs to throw. Patty doesn't need those. And that's going to be a huge part for Patty. We saw 2 touchdowns in game 1. Yeah, DeAndre is just – that's going to add a dimensional level that opens up Travis Kelcey in ways, and then it's going to open up run lanes. But on the defense, man, how why? What?
Why?
Why are you guys going to keep – what is going on in the NFL where they look at these guys that are potential trade conversations because they all talk, and they're like, you know what? I don't want him. I don't want to send a 5th or 6th round pick to go get this guy. I'm going to let him just sit there. No, there used to be a rule, and especially when it goes to waivers, where you put a claim in even if you don't want the guy just to prevent the better teams from getting him. It should be the same thing in every type of trade conversation. Just put in a deal like if they don't accept it, they don't accept it. But at least I tried. It doesn't even feel like teams are trying to go get these guys now. And they're just like, all right, yeah. Chiefs now have 2 sets of defensive linemen that can go and attack a quarterback at a plus 8.5 sack average game, or a year. Like, it's stupid. If a defensive line can give you that at any point in time, stop it. I don't want to be in the NFL, be an NFL fan anymore. I don't want to be a college football fan. I'm gonna go watch the CFL at this point in time. It's gonna be Chiefs running the whole gauntlet at this point in time. It's crazy. But yeah, no, rich get richer. Go figure.
Don't be think I won't be watching the CFL and the UFL. Now let's not get it twisted.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, 100%.
They will be getting watched. But anyone, let us know down below what you think were some of the underrated trade deadline moves so far of the weekend as well. Big day on Tuesday, culminating with the NFL trade deadline as well as the college football playoff and absolutely nothing else whatsoever. But that's now going to take us into Kelcey's favorite part of every show, and that is, of course, crunch time. And for crunch time, Kelcey, you're kind of cooking up a little bit something different here. Like, instead of going with a rotobot or a rant or a ranking, you told me, DJ, just get out of the way. So, Kelcey, the floor is yours.
Well, DJ, you're going to have to answer the questions and get out of the way. Well, get out of the way and then answer my questions. So, obviously, we had the trade deadline yesterday. And as much as I would love to do just trade deadline things, we can't just talk about trade deadline. But the name of this is we're going to call it trade deadline trivia. Does not necessarily mean they all relate to trades, but they do all relate to the NFL. So, DJ, I got 3 questions for you. Let's see if you can come up with the answers. I just found these randomly, and I think they're very interesting. We're going to start out with the number 1, and I do think you know this answer. I don't think it's going to be like a mystery to you. But one team in the modern era of the NFL has had the number 1 offense and number 1 defense in yards per game for an entire regular season and missed the playoffs. Do you know who this team is?
Yes, because it was the San Diego Chargers.
Can you give me the year?
It was after '08, so it was like '09, 10, something like that. Maybe a little bit.
06.
'06?
06 Chargers. I believe. Oh, sorry, no, I read it wrong. Oh wait, my bad. Oh
Okay, I
wait.
was like, "Wait a minute, '06, LaDainian Tomlinson won MVP now. Hold on now."
Yeah, but they missed the playoffs. Thought that was
Like the
interesting,
worst special
considering they
teams
did
we've
have
ever
a
seen.
trade deadline deal that brought them a very talented player
Mm.
onto that team, but they still could not get to the playoffs. So thought that was an interesting one. All right, DJ. There are 5 teams that do not retire numbers. Can you give me 2?
Green Bay.
Incorrect. Technically correct, but I'm gonna call it incorrect. But yes, no,
Oh,
we'll give you credit. Yes, that's 1.
Chicago.
No, sorry, actually, correction. Green Bay is incorrect. Chicago is also incorrect.
Oh, well, goddamn. Okay.
My bad. You went from 1 to 0.
Yeah, thanks, guy. Thanks for, like, dangling the carrot and taking it away. I should
So
have stopped the
a
count to
hint
1.
here: we have brought up 2 of these teams today.
How about the Chargers? They shouldn't have
No,
anybody worth retiring at
no,
this point.
not the Chargers.
Alright, I retire. I got nothing.
All
I'm
right.
gonna end up going through the other 28 teams before I get to it.
All right. So I'm just gonna name off all 5. The Atlanta Falcons. We didn't talk about them really. The Dallas Cowboys. Obviously talked about them.
They don't retire
Houston
numbers, though?
Texans. Did also talk about them a little bit. Raiders. We talked about a little more. And the Baltimore Ravens. All 5 do not retire numbers. Houston Texans are the closest, like to that list. Instead of retiring numbers, the Texans honor the jerseys of the greatest players, such as J.J. Watt's 99 and Andre Johnson's 80. So, yeah, there you go. And the last one. In 2000, the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl. We all know that. But do you know how many games they played all throughout their season where they did not score a single offensive touchdown or a single touchdown period?
God, it was something ridiculous. I think it was, like, 9, something along those lines.
No, it was 5 games. An NFL team in the
Was it
modern
5?
era of the NFL
I thought it was just
did
5
not
that they
score.
won. Okay, wow, okay, never mind.
Yeah, 5 games they played where they did not score a touchdown, and they won a Super Bowl. So,
You
ladies
had a
and gentlemen,
defense
you don't need an offense to win a Super Bowl, is what that tells me.
that well, 24 years ago, at least.
Yeah. No, those are just random questions I found around the internet that I thought were very interesting. I kind of started collecting at least the one of them, the Chargers one. I started collecting that like 2 weeks ago. I was like, I'm going to use this somehow. I'm going to find a way to fit this in. So
There's a way.
yeah, and if you guys got any more fun questions, trivia questions, feel free to drop in the comments. We're always happy to answer them. Or if you guys need any help with any of fantasy football conversations, I know we've been answering a few over on Twitter, on X, pretty regularly actually, and over on YouTube as well. And then if you guys need any help, go download Rotobot from the App Store, rotobot.ai, to get you your fantasy football AI advisor. So
Absolutely. And absolutely don't want to miss on that. But we appreciate y'all for hanging out with us here to talk about what's going on in the wide world of sports. Be sure to check in every Fridays for Fantasy Football Fridays on YouTube and X. And of course, every Sunday's DJ's Best Bets. We had a miserable week last week due to injuries, malpractice at quarterback, and unfortunately, just one of them a day late, a few yards short, unfortunately. But we're going to bounce back and continue our ridiculous hot streak on the year. But that's going to do it here for us today. We'll see you all again next.